and good morning and good evening to some parts of the world. Today we are talking about a somber topic today, but you are more than welcome to ask questions as you hear the stories being shared, as you hear the facts being relayed. Today we have Allison Niles from we are live streaming directly from the Philippines. You might have heard there was maybe this big storm that might have swept through. And you'll be able to hear an update on that, plus other things. So Allison, why don't you go ahead and do a brief introduction about who you are?
Absolutely. So I am a missionary with WorldVenture, rather new to the Philippines. I've only been here officially full time for about 4 months. I moved here to work with high risk youth. And yeah, I'm one of a team of, I think, 5 units currently on the field. So
Okay, perfect.
I should also say I'm in Cebu City on the island of Cebu, Philippines, if that helps.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm.
So we do know that in the end of September, early October, they had an earthquake that was, some sources says, was 6.7 magnitude to 6.9. Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So around 10 p.m. at night, the earth literally started to move. I, being from Wisconsin, have never experienced an earthquake and never really thought I would, but knew it was a possibility. But man, that was a whole new experience. And I am quite a bit south. I'm about halfway down the island from where the epicenter actually struck, which was the northern tip of the island of Cebu. And I happened to be outside when it struck, and literally it felt like the whole earth was just spinning. It looked like my house was shaking. The gate was rocking so much that I actually thought it was going to smash the front bumper of my car. Water was sloshing everywhere. Like, it was just such a surreal experience because, again, I've never been through anything like that. And it took a few seconds of like, oh, that's a funny feeling. What is, oh my gosh, it's an earthquake. And then all of my neighbors start rushing outside at the same time. I just happened to be outside putting the garbage out. And so the earthquake, we felt it pretty severely here in Cebu, but we didn't see a ton of widespread damage per se. But almost immediately, word started coming in from all of our friends, our church mates, people that are connected with our team down here about the damage and the destruction that had happened in the northern tip of the island. So they felt it significantly stronger than we did, to the point where a lot of buildings were just absolutely obliterated within about, I think, a minute to a minute and a half of actual shaking.
All right. Wow. Yeah. And we often joke in California that, if it's an earthquake that's less than 4 point something, we're not getting out of bed. But yeah, there's lots of people have a lot of memories about those strong earthquakes. But in the Philippines versus California, California has a lot of earthquake strong buildings. Can you describe what it looks like in the Philippines for what people had to face?
Absolutely. So we're a tropical environment here. It's very humid, very moist, and so I would say the majority of the buildings are built one of two ways. They're either built out of like steel and rebar and concrete poured around that, or they're made out of literal like scraps of wood, tarps, and bamboo and pieces of wood, things like that. And so a lot of the structures that are hurricane proof or typhoon proof are usually not earthquake proof, and vice versa. The ones that are made to withstand a typhoon usually crumble in an earthquake, and that's basically what happened. Is they had a couple century old Spanish cathedral that collapsed. They had a lot of buildings ranging from people's individual houses to like McDonald's and businesses, things like that. Basically, just left a lot of things either with severe damage to the actual structure of it, or collapsed in part or completely. So a lot of total loss for a lot of people.
And so it wasn't bad enough that we had an earthquake, or you guys had an earthquake. And then Philippines decided to have a typhoon.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
Explain that.
before the typhoon, though, we had a couple more earthquakes. So it started with the 6.9, and then south of us in the lower region of the Philippines, in a place called Davao, they had twin sister quakes. Sorry. And so those were still felt in Cebu, not necessarily as strongly, but they've estimated something in the 7,000+ aftershocks. And again, kind of like you said in California, ranging from a blip on the radar at like 2 point something magnitude all the way up to we've had a couple cents in the 4 and 5 magnitude category as well. So it's been pretty disarming, just because at some point, to have never experienced an earthquake in my life, and for most of the people here to not have had a major earthquake in, say, 10+ years,
Wow.
to all of a sudden be feeling them multiple times a day, daily, to be like, oh, that was a tiny one, it was okay, is again really surreal. But it's done a lot to the I would say the emotional and mental headspace for a lot of people throughout the southern Philippines as well.
Wow. Yeah.
And then a month later, the typhoon came on over us.
Yeah.
So that actually,
Share about
yeah,
that a bit.
that happened just on Tuesday. So again, wee hours of the morning. We had enough advance notice because it was building on the radars east of us in the sea. So they had forewarned us that it could be I believe they call it Category 4 hurricane. So hurricane, typhoon, same thing, just different names in different parts of the world. So it was up to about a Category 4 by the time it made landfall. And so there was a lot of preparation. The store shelves, there was a huge run on the groceries. There was a lot of people stocking up with water and all of that, just kind of expecting utilities to be damaged, and probably some damage to, the things that weren't bolted down and tied down firm enough. But what we did not expect was just severe and evasive flooding that came about as a result of the hurricane. And so again, we saw like pieces of steel roofs and tin fences and things like that, with some bending and damage and pieces just completely coming off. But around the time that the hurricane hit full force, which was somewhere around 5 a.m., all of a sudden water started rising up in multiple communities. Rivers were swelling due to the excessive rainfall from the hurricane. But we also happen to have high tide and storm surges that were pushing the water in from the ocean. And then obviously the water coming down from the mountains with the rainfall. It just made the perfect storm where we saw multiple communities get completely flooded out. Quite a few people that I was talking to had water rise up to about their second story if they had it. One family was actually trying to break the roof, thinking they were going to have to escape the second story too, because when the water started rising, they just didn't know when it was going to stop. And sadly, in most communities, the water receded right away. Some communities, it stayed for a while. So some of the families actually had to be rescued from their homes where they were, had climbed up to the second story of buildings nearby. Others, the water dissipated rather quick as the storm passed through, but ended up leaving just intense damage, and literal feet of mud. And it's more than just mud. It's, everything that came out of the sewers, the garbage, the river itself, all of it. So a lot of communities got pretty rocked by the flooding in particular.
Man, and I can't imagine how that's affecting your water table, your water supplies, and
Yeah. So, for example, I live closer to one of the communities that got flooded. My neighborhood is built up a little higher, so we didn't actually have floods here in this neighborhood. But we just got our water back about 5 days later, and even then, to this day, like I don't have very good water pressure. It's mostly just kind of trickling out of most of the faucets. So, and there's been varying degrees of people either having water but not electricity. The cell service was out for almost 48 hours for a lot of folks. Those that did finally get cell service back didn't have the electricity to charge their phones, to be able to notify their loved ones and connect. And then the strain on water to try and clean up all of the mud just exacerbated the already dire need for people to have clean drinking water and just everyday use water.
Mm. So you and your team are doing some relief efforts that are ongoing as we speak, from this past weekend to, I think, even much earlier than that. And you've had so tell me about those relief efforts. I saw
Absolutely.
James' video about, he took a video and he showed it to his partners, about all the tent cities since the earthquake and typhoon and everything. So tell me about the
Yeah.
relief efforts.
Absolutely. So it's kind of twofold. Again, the ones that got hit hardest by the earthquake are a bit north of us. So James Riggins and the Ralstons took a team that just landed over the weekend up to the northern part of the island. So they're in a area that was, I would say, probably one of the hardest hit cities from what I understand and what I'm told. And so they've got people that, again, just total loss of like businesses and buildings and homes, churches, all of it. You've got a lot of people that are just living in tents. And so those people actually fared the brunt of the typhoon in some already pretty dire situations. So that team, that short-term team that's up there, that's just starting their week, their focus is on spreading the love of Jesus through very real helping projects. And so they've got everything from trauma counseling to work with the people to help them kind of overcome some of this mental load and this traumatic experience that many of them are still living on a day-to-day basis. They're doing some different outreach programs, including feeding, like actual meal times, cooked hot meal distributions, doing things like hygiene kits and trying to give away some relief goods that they were able to coordinate. And then they're also doing, obviously, a lot of this with gospel presentation to try and meet that spiritual need that we become so intently aware of when we're shown how fragile human life is. And so they're really trying to holistically meet a lot of the physical, mental, and spiritual needs of these folks up in the northern region altogether. And so that's one thing you can definitely be praying on. That's going to go on this whole week. But that's not just the only part of it. That just happened to be a short-term team that got ordained to come in at just the right time. They actually switched their focus from what they were going to be doing to be able to focus on more of this relief effort, trauma counseling, all of that. And so they were able to pave it pretty quickly, and just praying that God is going to bless that time with them up there. They expect to reach just estimated numbers based on the communities that they're going in through. And again, a lot of this information comes from the churches that they're partnering with. So this is a short-term boost to a long-term solution, and that is the churches up in this region. And so they're looking to reach something like 300 plus families, which could equate to about 1,000 to 1,200 people, they estimate. So
Wow.
we'll see what God does with that. But in just a week, their hope and intent and prayer is to reach, well over 1,000 people that were just pretty much devastated in some varying degrees by the earthquake. So that's one part of it. The other half of it now is down here in Cebu City, where we experienced so much of the flooding. And it's not to say that the hurricane only devastated Cebu City. It's pretty widespread throughout the central portion of the Visayas, which is this region, this lower region of the Philippines. But here in Cebu City, where myself and several coworker units are, we've had varying degrees of attempts at relief and walking alongside people. So, for example, one of the Christian schools we're connected with was one of the areas that was flooded. And so earlier in the week, one of our team and some people went to that Christian school to just help the staff clear out that rancid mud, to be able to do some cleaning and try and, basically purge what can't be saved and try and save what can be saved. Another example is my coworker Tim and I were able to make it into one of the communities that was just rocked by the flooding from the main river, and got to visit some sisters. And so we were able to pray over the home, over the family. Because it was literally the day after the hurricane, I was able to cook some food and take it there, along with some, prepackaged food and a giant thing of water to try and help them just stave off another day or two until they could get, power back to hopefully, get some of to be able to provide some of those things for themselves. But they were just in such a dire need in that moment. And it's actually a set of three sisters. So one sister who has 10 kids, we were able to get to her, and then the other two sisters were able to make it over to my coworkers' homes, where they were able to feed them in person.
Mm.
And so just being able to try and have these loving touches to provide for very immediate needs, because what we were hearing from, particularly in this instance, these three sisters, they had literally not eaten since before the typhoon hit. And that was, by that point, 36 some hours. So yeah.
Wow.
And those are just a few examples, not limited. And obviously the work is going to be ongoing. But one thing, in talking to some of the community members that we know that went through these floods, there's just a lot of devastation. And it's, as much as we want to offer a helping hand, one of the biggest needs that we're hearing right now is they basically just lost everything. Like, I asked my one friend when he and his mom were able to escape, what can be saved from the house? And he's like, well, I grabbed the laptop. So that's about all they have left. Everything else is going to essentially be a total loss, because they know that this is such a serious problem and it almost cost them their lives. They want to move. So now there's added costs of being able to break a lease to be able to move to a safer place, on top of he lost work because work shut down for most people. So now they don't have income, and they don't, have a safe place to live, and they don't have their stuff. And so they're just kind of hobbling along. And that's what we're hearing from a lot of people, is just they lost everything. And so they're trying to clean up the mess and figure out what home is going to look like to rebuild it and rebuild life.
So, with all that devastation, with all the sorrow, the loss, the trauma, um, I can't even imagine. Tell me about how God is working through that.
Absolutely. Well, he's very evidently here in just some really crazy ways. So right about a week or two after the earthquake hit, I happened to have to travel up to Manila. It's the northern island, the big city in the northern island. I was just going for immigration, and I struck up a conversation with my cab driver. Come to find out, he and his family are actually from this main city that my coworkers are currently in. So this was just like a total fluke, because we were just talking and I used some of the words that I'm learning in my language classes, and he spotted that that is the language from this region. And so it struck up a just completely random conversation. And by the end of the time that he dropped me off, I found out that he and his family lost everything in their hometown. Dad's home is completely destroyed, brothers, same. And so it's just one example of a family that basically lost everything. And they, because of the need, were open for literally any kind of help, any relief, any information, anything. And so I knowing that this team was coming in this week, was able to connect this team and the local church in that area to this man's family. And so while I can't go up to the northern part of the island for exactly this, it was just such a clear God moment. Because, like, what are the chances that I'm going to happen to be in a city, a couple hour plane ride away, and the one cab driver that I happen to strike up a conversation with is from literally that area.
Wow.
And so then to see God move through me to my coworkers to establish that connection to hopefully follow up with this family, I'm so excited to hear at the end of the week, what God did through that, what seems to be random but very clearly divine interaction. And so seeing him move in such tiny but potentially huge ways is, I don't know, just a testament to his power and his glory. I know we're talking about really heavy stuff, but it's so awesome to be wowed by God in the midst of some of these really tough, really horrible things. And so I'm just, I'm thinking of examples like that where we're seeing God move in big ways. I happen to have totally random. Again, I just moved here. I had some extra furniture and some stuff that I wasn't planning on keeping, and I wasn't sure what to do with it, because it's not like there's a thrift store you can donate it to here. So I just kind of had it tucked away. And out of the blue, my coworker Chris called me and said, "Hey, the church lost all of their AV equipment. Everything was destroyed in the flood. Do you by chance still have that random TV?" And I was like, yeah. And they just happened to have somebody that was in town the next day and was able to take the TV up north. And so what seemed to be, maybe one man's, I don't want to call it trash because it was a perfectly good TV, but like what I was planning on getting rid of turned out to be an absolute treasure that's going to be used, daily, weekly in church and for services and things like that. And so it's been so sweet to see, again, what seems to be really small, but God is moving in such big ways.
Yeah, when it's dark, that's when the light shines the brightest, it seems, when you're more aware,
Absolutely.
when you see God more at work. And it's sad that it has to be when it's a devastation like this. Uh, Tell me about, and I just want to ask, welcome to everyone who's joined us online on the website and everything. If you do have questions, we are taking them on our Facebook. We are taking them on our LinkedIn. We are taking them on Twitch and YouTube. So please do put them in the chat. This will not be a long broadcast, so you might want to put those questions in as soon as possible. And if you've just joined on the website, you'll be able to see all the recording at the end if you missed something. So let's talk about the short-term team a bit.
Mhm.
The short-term team that came, the short-term and left, and the one that's coming. Tell me a little bit about them. Tell me about what they're doing again for those that just joined, and the fact that they came during a typhoon warning was kind
Yeah.
of amazing that they followed through with that. I mean, there was
Yeah.
a friend of mine, I posted this on Facebook the other day, but a friend of mine, when I first went on my first short-term mission trips, told me, I'm not praying for your safety, I'm praying for your effectiveness.
Mm.
So tell me about the short-term teams.
Absolutely. So it's kind of twofold, and I should probably double down on there was actually another typhoon that was actually much stronger that just passed, or is, I guess, technically passing through the Philippines as of yesterday, and I think part of today. And so there was a lot of question of like, do we even still come because of the current typhoon? There was also, so up to the last few days in the trip, I'm told, some of them were kind of like, what's the plan here? Is this a wise idea? Is this even going to work? And then there was also the question, I believe that came about within the probably last 2 weeks or so, from what I'm hearing, was their original model is a sort of evangelism outreach. A short-term team will come in, they'll boost the church and the efforts by partnering with church members who have gone through training, and then they go out into the community and do evangelism programs, do opportunities to share the light and the love and the hope of Jesus Christ with people who don't know him. Um, that is an awesome model, but it just was kind of like, is it the right model for this moment? And what else, if not, could we be doing, or maybe we could add to that to be more effective in our ministry and time here? Again, because they're not going to save the whole world in a week, but they are going to come in, partner with the church, which is a lot of things. It opens a lot of doors within the community by having the short-term team there, but it also bolsters not only relationships, but opportunities with the church members as well, because the short-term team is partnering directly with members of the church to get into their own community. So it's just this awesome, model for outreach. But with that, like I said, it was kind of do we want to keep on the exact same path, or are there other opportunities for other things? And so that's where it sounds like a lot of these other opportunities, or I don't know what to call them, maybe outreach points, came about. So in talking again to my coworkers, they had mentioned that they're doing trauma counseling, which is such it really struck me when I heard that. And I was kind of like, oh my gosh, can we do that down here too? Like that sounds amazing. Because so many times we're like, okay, did you eat? Do you have power? Do you have water? How can I meet that very real need for you in this moment? But we forget about the mental and spiritual side of it. And so to see them kind of open up this program for the trauma counseling, I think is going to do wonders and just do such amazing things for the folks that, again, Some of them lost everything. A lot of them lost loved ones. A lot of them were, facing injuries. And to come through in the area that they're in, which is already not like a super wealthy area, to have built their life, built their home, invested in their community, and then just see that knocked out in, a minute and a half earthquake is wild. So things like the trauma counseling, I think, are going to be incredibly impactful. I, again, definitely be praying over those opportunities. But then just opportunities to bring in, a hot, delicious meal, the hygiene kits, some different relief supplies and things that way. It's a way to minister to people's very real needs that open their heart as well. And so again, I'm just excited to hear what comes out of this time, because the goal is to make it very God focused. Like, this is God and His love that we're pouring out on the community, but it's kind of meeting all of those different needs at the same time. So that's one team. They're going, like I said, they're going out to the northern part of the island where they're doing the kind of earthquake relief program. I actually just, with my other coworker, Brittany, dropped off another team today at the airport that is just leaving. So they were on a neighboring island doing the original format for what that evangelism trip was that I had talked about. And it was, from what I'm hearing in the car on the way from the port to the airport, it was awesome. They had a lot of really amazing opportunities, a lot of really great chances to share the gospel, to love on people, to pray over people, and to build up the church. But there were some issues. Obviously, the second typhoon hindered, just the recovery from the first leading into the second hindered not only their ability to do follow up. So there's going to be a lot of work for the church to follow up on afterwards, but also it locked them into that island where they were supposed to make it back here in Cebu. So, praise God that He made everything work together, because they, like I said, literally got off the ferry from the neighboring island into my and my coworker's car and to the airport in enough time to be there to leave for an international flight. So, yeah, God is good.
God is good. And I love reading the stories that are coming from your field. You guys are doing great work. Let's talk about the relief fund that WorldVenture set up. Now, this fund has actually been set up for quite some time because of the needs that sometimes arise like this. Although this is pretty unique in that you had an earthquake, a typhoon, then another typhoon, and with the death toll being recently pretty big.
For the earthquake, the last report that I saw online was somewhere around 70 to 80 something folks lost their lives. It, I think, left over 1,200 injured in various degrees. I didn't see any reports on the amount of homes lost or anything like that. But again, follow James Riggins and the Ralston social media, and you might be able to see some of the photos from what that looks like without numbers.
So this fund that's set up, we have the QR code up on the screen if you want to scan it to make a one-time gift to help with. Tell me a little bit about the fund. What if someone gave today a one-time gift to help with relief efforts? How will those funds be used?
Absolutely. So one thing that we view as very important here is working in and through the church, because the church is even more so the hands and feet of Jesus than us individual missionaries are. And so the funds, as much as possible, are going to be connected and funneled through the churches, the local churches, because they're the ones that know the community members. They're the ones that maybe have more access to folks, where, again, in the case of this short-term team, my coworkers live down here in Cebu and they're just visiting this northern city. So it's the hopes that any funds that were to come in for this, we'll be able to put into the hands of the people who know the greatest needs. But it's going to go from, what I'm told, anything to initial relief efforts, which could, again, mean things like food, hygiene, clothing, basic living supplies, to a little bit more long-term and very much more expensive. Both the earthquake and the typhoon victims, we're looking at helping them rebuild their lives, maybe rebuild their structures, with the church in particular. Again, I know some examples of, like, they're out of all of their AV equipment. So, kind of back to the acoustic guitar and a preacher speaking loud enough kind of thing. So there's a whole host of different opportunities that the funds can be used for. But again, I go back to like the sister of the pastor's wife in one of our areas, her and her family literally, again, by the flood, just lost everything. By all reports, their furniture is gone, a lot. Anything that soaks up that mud, that's cloth, paper, anything like that is garbage because that mud is foul. And so a lot of people just lost everything. So there's going to be an opportunity to reach into the lives of people in some very real ways with some helps in rebuilding their life. And I can't say it's going to be exactly for, this, that, or the other thing, but those are the types of things that the funds are going to be channeled into. For the most part, for example, with the typhoon, the city has the utilities back on, but you have to remember a lot of people have been at least a week, if not more, without basic utilities, which means they're buying those utilities with money they don't have because they've been out of work. In some cases, people are completely just out of a job because it doesn't exist anymore, or because they were laid off because that job took such a huge hit too. So there's going to be the opportunity to step into the lives of folks, not just in the churches themselves, but also into the community. And again, all of it with the intent of bringing the glory of God and the love and hope that He has to instill in the community around us.
Amen to that. So as we close our time today with the update, and we'll try to bring you more updates to those watching, follow our social media. I follow the team very closely, so they'll give us updates and stuff. And maybe eventually we'll have another live stream like this where you can hear more of what's going on. So tell me, Allison, how can people be praying for your team, the short-term teams, and as well as the Filipino people, the people most directly impacted by this?
Absolutely. I would probably start with both of the teams, because like one is literally flying home right now, so they're in the air in a big tin can. So as per usual with flights, especially international flights, be praying for their safety. It was a little bit again chaotic trying to get them home, and so I know that they're full on the spirit, but as we know is very, very true of spiritual warfare is real.
Yes.
And Satan likes to hit hardest, not only when we're on the field, but also right when we've got home from the field. So I would definitely be praying for the team that just went back to Oregon. Be praying for the opportunities that they share back with their communities that could lead to future teams and future support and things like that. But then also be praying for the one that is currently in the northern part of the island, because they're the ones that have, again, a potential captive audience of anywhere from 1,000 plus people right now. And it's in a community that just has so much potential to come to know Jesus. So I would definitely be praying over them. I, without sharing all of the details, can say spiritual warfare is absolutely happening the minute that they landed. So be praying for the spiritual, mental, and physical health of every one of those 9 team members and of the missionaries and the partnering church. We saw Typhoon try and stop them and it didn't, but that doesn't mean we want to have more shower down on them. So just bathe them in prayer. Obviously be praying for the people that were hit. I haven't heard much of the report from the typhoon that's currently blowing through the northern part of the island. I'm sure news reports are going to be coming out about that, but again, it was category 5, so it's serious. So up north, they got rocked by that. Down south, we've had earthquakes and typhoons with the flooding. I would say be praying for all 3 parts. Pray for people's physical needs, that they can get those needs met, that where there's injury, they can find healing, where there's needs for basic care, basic supplies, and basic living, they can get those. Be praying for the church that we can be the ones really stepping into that again to bring the glory to God, but also bring the really real help that people need. And then be praying for, I would say, the mental health. There's a lot of trauma that a lot of people have to overcome, especially back to back to back incidences that have rocked us. So definitely be praying for all aspects of the people of the Philippines. And honestly, we're in the ring of fire. So we're never going to get away from earthquakes, but if we could just calm that fault down for a while, that would be amazing. And if we could pass typhoon season with no more, that would be amazing. So, take it to the one who created the world and ask him to just calm it down over in this region for us, please.
Yes, that would be nice.
Yeah,
And
that'd be super nice.
just to reiterate, the short-term team is safe. That's undergoing all this warfare. They're safe.
Yeah.
But I agree. Spiritual warfare is massively a thing in a believer's life, and it's not fun.
It can get into people's heads, their hearts, and their minds. And the goal of spiritual warfare is to disrupt them and distract them. So whether it's tiny doubt or serious things, the point is anything that can keep them from spreading the love, spreading the gospel, spreading the glory of God to the people that God is preparing. Obviously, that's the exact opposite of what we want happening. So just be praying to protect both teams in both aspects, always.
All right. Well, as you've heard the prayer requests, this recording will stay on. It'll be up on our blog as well if you need to refer to it. I will be putting this section from the recording out on its own. If you need reminders of how to pray for the people in the Philippines, the teams in the Philippines, for our team in the Philippines, and that we can make gospel impact. So Allison, thank you so much for coming on. And it's what, 10 o'clock at night over there, 11 o'clock at night?
Almost 11.
11 o'clock at night, and it's about 7:37 in Arizona. So a.m. So yes, thank you for sharing that. We'll stay on after the live stream is over, of course. But if you have questions, anyone out there watching it, when it's no longer live, we will get your answers for you. Just go ahead and put them in the chat. And WorldVenture will forward your questions on to Allison and the team and get those answers for you. But meanwhile, I do want to urge you, the link to the giving link is worldventure.com/disaster relief Cebu. And that is in the chat, but is also in the QR code on your screen. So I urge you, if you feel led to give $50, $100, $200, whatever you lay on your hearts, $10, the widow's mite, go ahead and give by scanning that QR code with your phone if you're watching on YouTube. But thank you for praying for us, for praying for the team, for praying, and thank you, Allison, for sharing all this on behalf of the team. So thank you, everyone.